In the What is Dungeon Builder tutorial, we introduced you to Dungeon Builder's three phases of setup, draw, and play. We can associate these three phases with two different modes of play called draft and play. Draft mode pertains to all the activities that take place during the setup and draw phases, while the play mode is a singular environment which pertains only to the play phase. When game masters and players enter play mode, several features of draft mode are disabled while other features, unique to play mode, are enabled. We will explore these mode-driven changes in this tutorial. Specifically, we will cover three topics: the stages of play mode and the associated changes which occur when going from draft to play mode. Second, how progressive disclosure and moving the party icon work. And finally, we'll close by taking a look at the player's map history tab, which is an inventory of all the maps that they have adventured in. Looking at our first topic. Both game masters and players go from draft mode to play mode by starting a session. And they can do this in one of two ways. They can either select an adventure from this drop-down list box that appears on the game space, or they can go over to the session space and then click on the My Sessions tab to pick out a session they would like to play in. Either way has the same effect. Note that when we speak of starting or entering a session, the correct terminology is to say that a game master starts a session. Like you'll see that here, I am the game master, I'm the poster, and I can start that session. But in sessions which are posted by someone else and in which I am a player, I enter those games. I do not start them. However, we'll use the term start session generically in most cases. Regardless of which of these two methods you use to start your session, there's a series of changes that Dungeon Builder goes through to make the transition to play mode, and those changes unfold in two stages, what we call pre-party icon and party icon. When you first click on enter or start, Dungeon Builder goes through some gyrations to configure the environment for playing, but it stops just short of placing the party icon on the map, and that's really the limiting factor between these two stages and going to play mode. This pre-party stage is a stopping point that allows you to decide whether you even want to place a party icon on the map. And if you do, well, then you have the opportunity to pick which dungeon you want to use and what level of that dungeon you want to start in. Now, the changes that take place in going to play mode vary depending upon the role that you have. If you are a game master for the session, clicking start has the following effects. On the dungeon tab, you are no longer able to rename or delete your dungeons. Secondly, while you can add monsters and customize the content of existing rooms, you can no longer draw maps on the map tab. Further, the game clock appears and is active, the directed chat window appears but is not active, and the session care tab appears on the players tab. And I'll show you what these look like in just a moment. Now, one note here is that for game masters, the admin control panel and the monster tabs are unaffected by going to play mode. They remain fully operational. Now, for players, things are even more interesting. If the player has a Game Master license, but in this particular session they are participating as a player, not a Game Master, well, then all of those Game Master functions they normally have are hidden from them. And here I'm talking about the maps, the dungeons, the monster tabs, all of that stuff disappears, as well as the setup monster and encounter tabs on the admin control panel. These are functions that the player just won't need as they are participating as a player. Furthermore, just by logging into Dungeon Builder, not even joining a session yet, if the player has already submitted their characters for that session, and those characters have already been reviewed and approved by the Game Master, the simple act of that player logging in makes those characters active on the Game Master's session character screen and on the character tab. This is something that's very important that we'll discuss in more detail when we get to managing characters. However, here what you need to know is that those characters becoming active, even when the player hasn't joined the session, means that the Game Master will be able to make changes. He'll be able to edit those characters as if they are in the session. Further, once the player goes beyond logging in to actually click start to join the session, then the direct action chat box becomes active for both game masters and players, and the player sees the game clock and the map history tab for the first time on the main map toolbar. Now, I know I covered a bunch of information there, but let me show you what I mean. I'll use this quick launch toolbar up here to start this session. Now, here I'm starting as the game master. Now, when I acknowledge this prompt that I'm provided, Dungeon Builder goes through a series of gyrations that I mentioned earlier, and the first thing you'll notice is that the game clock now is active over here. Now the game clock will pick up where you left off your last session, so if you want to reset it to 0, which I do here, just click on reset, and the clock will reset. Next, looking at the dungeons list over here in the game space, you'll notice that the delete and rename buttons are now gone. You can no longer edit these dungeons. However, the nice thing about this is that you can open up any dungeon for this particular adventure. Now, I just so happen to want to open up the Barrow Downs dungeon, so I'll click open on it. And then I'll select the level. And the first thing you'll notice here is that the toolbar is gone. You do not have the ability to draw rooms, add corridors, or customize the maps in any fashion. All you have is this nice yellow button here for placing the party icon. And this is the indicator that you have completed all the changes in going to the pre-party icon stage. Now at this point, you have to make a couple of decisions. First, you have to commit to which dungeon you're actually going to play in during this current session. You'll notice that all the dungeons are still here, so I can jump back and forth between them should I choose to do so. Okay, I'm going to stay here on the Barrow Downs because I do intend to play that one. But once you place the party icon on the map, that dungeon is now locked in place and you are committed during this current session. While you'll be able to move around in a level, in fact, among all the levels of that dungeon, you will not be able to access the other dungeons until you have completed your adventure. Second, you have to pick which room you want the party to start off on. Ordinarily, this will be room 0 of level 1, the main entrance to your dungeon. However, there are some parties who can teleport into any room of any level of the dungeon, and Dungeon Builder supports this by allowing you to pick the level and room you want to start the party icon off in. For example, I could choose the 3rd level or the 2nd level here and pick a room in that level. But I'm going to start off here on the 1st level with room 0. Okay, to place the party icon, all I do is click on this yellow button here, and up comes a dialog asking me to select a room number to place the icon in. I'll just leave it on the default of room 0 and click OK. Dungeon Builder goes through some more gyrations. Notice that there was a blank screen there. I want to talk about that in a second. And finally, you come to the map loaded with a party icon placed in the room that you designated. You'll also notice that on the Game Master version, you are given control over the magnification buttons as well as the grid buttons. So you can now operate those tools once you've placed the party icon. And by the way, a moment ago, did you see that screen when Dungeon Builder paused on the Dungeons tab and it was cleared of all the dungeons? That's one of those play mode changes we mentioned a moment ago. Now, when the icon is placed, an alert message is sent to the players at the same time. And I'll go over and take a look at a player version of this. And here you have the player's view on the Maps tab of the current location of the party. And notice how the game clock is now active for the player as well. That said, the main reason why we place the party icon is to enable progressive disclosure of the Game Master's map to the players and to automate the checking and generation of random monster encounters. So let's see how that works. Now, in this example, we did not teleport the party into the lower levels of the dungeon. We were just starting off at the beginning in room 0. Note that if you are picking up a game where you left off, the party icon would already be placed in a room on the map. Now, in practice, progressive disclosure is actually very simple. In short, when the Game Master moves the party icon on his version of the dungeon map, this movement is then communicated to each of the players' dungeon maps to reveal that portion of the dungeon to them. In addition, the game clock is automatically advanced based on this movement, and random monster encounters are checked, while any alarms that have been set in the game clock will also be triggered. Now, at the moment, we're looking at the Game Master's view for this session, and what I'm going to do is show you how this works in a series of small steps. First, the Game Master will move the party icon a short distance. I'll move it into room 1. Once the Game Master releases the party icon, Dungeon Builder asks the Game Master if he wants to share this movement with the player. Now, we present this confirmation for 2 reasons. First, some movements will be trivial, just within the room and not worth sharing. And also, the Game Master may want to reset the location of the party icon for some reason, something I'll explain here in a moment. But in any event, whenever the party icon is moved, this confirmation message will be presented. I'm going to accept it, which means the change is going to be sent to our player. So I'm going to go over to the player side, and he'll be asked whether he wants to accept this change as well. And the reason why is that the player may be doing something else, like reviewing his character sheets or rolling dice or whatever, and doesn't want to be disturbed by a map update. But if he says okay, then the map refreshes and shows the character more of the map as well as the new location of the party icon. Now, going back to the Game Master side, Note that all movement must be within inside of a room or a corridor. For example, if I try to move this icon outside here in the middle of nowhere, I'm given an error message. It won't let me do it, and it holds on to the mouse. So I'll move to room 3. It'll ask me if I want to propagate this change. I say, yes, I do. Now, if I go to the player side, it'll ask whether I want to see it on the player side. I'll say, okay to that. And there's the new location of the party icon in room 3. Now, suppose the player chooses not to accept the change because they're busy with something else, either chatting or they're looking at their character sheets, and they don't want to accept the change to the map that the Game Master has sent them. That's okay, because what will happen is that Dungeon Builder will store up all of those map changes that the Game Master has sent them, and then when the player finally does accept a map change, all of those changes to the map will be posted, okay? However, what's interesting is what happens when the Game Master makes a change to the party icon's location, but chooses not to propagate that to the players. Like suppose I'm going to take this icon and move it back to room 0, okay? And I choose not to propagate that to the players. And what goes on here is that this is a feature that allows a Game Master to kind of do a reset, to relocate the party back to their original location or another location earlier in the adventure, without the ability of turning back the clock. They can basically freeze the clock in time, but they can't turn back time. So what you'll notice is that the party icon on the Game Master's version is located in room 0 and the clock is set at 3 rounds. But on the player side, the party icon is still in room 3 and it's 3 rounds, okay? So they have the same time but different locations for the party icon. Now, this may be a bit confusing, but the issue is cleared up very quickly once the Game Master moves the party icon again. I'll put it back in room 1 and I'll send that to the players. I now have 5 rounds on the game clock here. And it also rolled an encounter, which I'll cancel. I don't care about that right now. And now I go to the player side, and when I confirm this movement, what will happen is the party icon will appear in room 1, and the clock will be at 5 rounds. And there you go. So it's a temporary reset capability within inside the application. Hopefully you won't need it that often. Now, something else I want to show you here is what happens when the party encounters a monster. I'm going to move the party icon into room 2 here, and I'm going to propagate that change to the players. And you'll notice on the Game Master side, there's clearly a monster icon in this room. But look at the player side. The player's version does not show the monster icon. This is a very powerful feature. This allows the Game Master a measure of privacy about the makeup of his dungeon. So while he has the benefit of being able to share the graphics of his dungeon, the beauty of his construction with his players, he doesn't have to give away the composition of his dungeon at the same time. Now, something that's a little bit different is what happens with stairwells. You'll see over here in room 6, I have a stairwell. Okay, I'm going to move the party icon to room 6 in a series of small moves. First, I'll grab it and move it here to this corridor and release it. I'll send that move to the players. Then I'm going to move it down to this corridor right here, and I'll send that movement to the players. Then I'll move it into room 6. I'll ignore those encounters I've generated. Get out of here. Into room 6, and I'll send that to the players as well. Now, clearly from the Game Master standpoint, he knows there's a stairwell in this room. And we go to the player's side to see what the changes look like on their map, and then we propagate those changes. The party icon appears in room 6, and the player also sees the stairwell icon. So your players will get an understanding of the physical construction of your dungeon, just not the compositional makeup of your dungeon. But perhaps the neatest feature of stairwells in the party icon is that you can use stairwells to move your party from one level to the next. Let me show you how that works. Let me double click on this room. And notice how the text for the stairway link has changed. It now says there's a stair that starts here and ends on the room 0, level 2, and I can click on go to this destination. First, the map for that destination level is brought up in the play space, so I'm now on the 2nd level, as you can see up here. And the party icon is moved to the destination room, room 0. So on the Game Master's map, the party has physically changed levels. Let's go see what happened on the player side. Well, they've been notified of a change of the party icon's location. We'll accept that. And sure enough, the party icon has been moved to the second level of the dungeon, and here they are in that room with the stairwell on the second level. Isn't that pretty cool? Okay, our last topic in this tutorial is the player history tab. You'll notice that this history tab has been inserted here in the main game menu. What this indicates is another great feature of Dungeon Builder. It's that players will no longer have to worry about forgetting or losing their adventure maps again. You see, when players go into play mode, a new map is created for each and every adventure, for each and every level, and it is stored here on the history tab. These maps are organized by dungeon level, and then by the date of the adventure. To access a map, all you have to do is click on the View button, and a separate window will open up and display the map. And there you go. Now you may notice that some maps are going to be repeated using this model. For example, we have the Barrow Downs first level in 2 different locations for 2 different dates, one on the 26th of March and one on the 22nd of March. This is going to require that you do a little bit of administration because we cannot provide you an integrated map view. So if you find that one of your maps is more complete than the other, that's why we provided you the delete button. All you have to do is click on delete and that older map will go away. And now I only have one first level of the Barrow Downs. And that completes this tutorial on the play mode. Thank you.